Hi, I'm Owlbear Rogue. Welcome to the cave. Mimics. Why am I so obsessed with them? Why does the heart want the things that it wants? I mentioned in a previous video that I've spent many years working with wild animals. I love critters. And there are two types of people who love critters. People who love critters that love them back, yeah, like your uncle with 4 golden retrievers. And then there are people who love critters, even if those critters are plotting their death, night and day. In fact, we think it's extra cute that they thirst for our blood. Their little souls are so full of malice, and it's adorable. Mimics? Mimics is critters. They're critters with a plan and a comical amount of patience for executing that plan. The fact that the plan is going nom 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 and doing murders somehow only makes it more endearing. As a DM, I show constant painful restraint in not putting a mimic around every corner in my games. Because if my players think everything is a mimic, then I can't get them with the mimics. And now that I'm saying all this, I'm realizing that maybe my whole purpose in DMing might stem from a desire to occasionally get players real good with a mimic. Apparently, I also have a comical amount of patience for executing plans. Here are my 5 most devious mimic ploys for you to steal. Number 1, mimic is a map that leads to a place with lots more mimics. This is pretty self-explanatory. I am making that mimic a map. You can put it anywhere you like. I would put it in the tower of a mad mage who's been experimenting on it, making it more intelligent, and it just wants to go back home. If the adventurers get eaten when they arrive there with it, that's really none of its concern. Your players go into the tower. Why does the mad mage keep this map in a terrarium? Who knows? He's mad after all. Players eventually follow map. Players roll for initiative. Maybe the cave entrance itself that it's led them to is a giant mimic. There's a bonus mimic for you. And don't actually me about mimics not being smart enough to do this. Like I said, it's the mage's fault. Besides, we are DMs. We're gods. What is the point of playing grown-up make-believe if I can't have a mimic that can turn itself into a crude but nevertheless accurate map? I don't want to hear it. Nobody puts mimic in a corner. Mimic is the corner. Number 2, there sure are a lot of puddles on the floor in this leaky, drippy dungeon or cave or abandoned manor house, old mine. Would sure be a shame if someone stepped in one and it happened to be a mimic. Number 3, mimics that get ya underwater like a little pack of piranha. Your players come across a pool of water, not deep enough to be particularly intimidating, but deep enough that it's hard to get something at the bottom without getting in the water. And deep enough that if you happen to get stuck down there, it would become a problem pretty fast. Side note, that is not how I would describe it to your party. Be cool, be cool, be cool. We want them to get in this water. There is sparkling treasure at the bottom of this pool. Gold, jewels, chests, weapons with ornate pommels that sure do look like they'd be magical. If someone in the party dives down and touches the treasure, uh-oh, it's sticky. Suddenly the treasure is gone and they're surrounded by dozens of little aquatic mimics, just a thrashing whirlpool of snapping teeth and pseudopods. If you want to be an extra big meanie, the mimic the character first touched can stay in its object form for a bit so that it stays sticky. Above, the rest of the party has a hard time seeing what's going on, what with all the blood and the bubbles, but it's pretty obvious there's a problem. I, of course, would be remiss as a critter person if I didn't say that while I have seen piranhas do some pretty gruesome things, they rarely actually behave like this in reality. I've called them mimic piranhas because the image is just so common. I thought it would be a good visual shorthand for you all to understand what I'm going for. A churning, frenzied underwater feast. The main course? Your player characters. Number 4. Mimic is a stalagmite. We just had a small biology lesson, so here's a geology one. Stalagmites are the stone columns that rise up from the floor of a cave, formed by dripping water over time. Not to be confused with stalactites, which hang tightly from the ceiling. Now, mimic stalactites that wait until a party is underneath them and then fall from the ceiling to attack, that is hilarious too. Don't get me wrong, but right now we're talking about the ones that are on the ground. This particular mimic stalagmite is placed at the top of a crevice the party needs to go down. There's nothing else near the stalagmite. It's very important that you not seem excited about this stalagmite. What did I say? Play it cool, be cool, be cool. Ideally, you don't mention it at all until your party asks if there's anything nearby they could tie a rope to for climbing down the crevice. Then you say, oh, yeah, sure, there's a big stalagmite right there, a few feet from the edge. Then it seems like you just made the stalagmite up. It's definitely not something to pay any attention to at all. If we're lucky, your party will tie their rope on the unassuming, unimportant, probably made up on the spot stalagmite and start descending. You get to make the call here depending on how your players describe their descent. When is this mimic going to strike? I would love it if someone made it far enough down on the rope that they can see lots of skeletons and old adventuring gear at the bottom and some more stalagmites. That's right, more stalagmites at the bottom. These mimics are team players. The one at the top lures adventurers into tying on a rope and making themselves vulnerable, hanging precariously above the ground. Then the ones at the bottom get a snack when the adventurers go splat. Obviously, as a DM, think about how to make this as dramatic as possible. Let your players try to save themselves so it scratches the puzzle itch a little bit and isn't just a combat. I would give them each one action before rolling initiative once they start to realize something is wrong. Obviously, also be thoughtful about how long this drop is, especially if several members of the party are hanging in the balance, if you will. You probably don't want it to be totally fatal, just a big chunk of points down and they're facing a group of mimics. Unless you like that high-stakes combat and your players are on board with that kind of play, if this was a one-shot, I might consider making it a pretty nasty fall. Are your players quick and clever enough to save each other? Number 5, my very favorite one. I have been waiting literal years to unleash this on a party that's playing through Wild Beyond the Witchlight, a setting I think is perfect for this particular mimic. Mimic is a wishing well. A cutesy fairy tale wishing well with a shingled awning over the top of it, surrounded by flowers and butterflies. Maybe there are even some beautiful but secretly evil little pixies fluttering around it, encouraging the players to drop in a coin, make a wish. As soon as a player leans into the well, the obligatory bucket that's on a wound-up rope comes shooting out at them. Oops, it's actually a goopy tongue. The top rim of the well spouts teeth, the bottom rim of the awning spouts teeth, and these teeth are about to gnash together a big mouth ready to crunch. I particularly like the idea of the players actually dropping a coin in and leaning in to watch it fall, but it falls just a couple of feet and just kind of sits there. What is going on? Uh-oh, I'm being bitten in half. Those morbid little pixies, like me, are going to laugh until they cry. They're looking forward to cleaning up the scraps of your party when the mimic is done. They're murderous little assholes, but we know that only makes me love them more. There. Now you have the secrets to my life's work. Remember? Restraint is the key. Play it cool. Bide your time. You have a plan, and you need a comical amount of patience. This video was inspired by a little mother-daughter mimic duo I talked about in my Trickster God Dungeon video. So if you want more mimics or you want a cool dungeon to throw into your next game, check that video out. As always, thank you for exploring the feminine urge to play Dungeons & Dragons with me, Owlbear Rogue, who is an owlbear rogue and definitely not a mimic.